marched on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March.
Again, rebounded by Indiana. The game is over.
For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk,
Oh, he just shook the gravity.
and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger 10. Here's Steve Dace.
Greetings. Welcome to this week's episode of Bigger 10. I am Steve Dace alongside my co-host and, of course, never partner in any context. I just want to clarify. The one and only undead himself, Aaron McIntyre. Although, since we ain't seen the sun here in the Midwest in about 4 days, all of us looking a little undead right now.
I'm especially so today. My son woke up at 1 o'clock and just started bawling. Of course, my wife was at work, and I thought he was maybe afraid, but then it dawned on me he was probably thinking back to Thursday around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And
yes, those earlier memories the earliest ones can scar us for life, indeed. Well, let's get to it, shall we? Of course, this is a March Madness edition of Bigger 10. We begin, as we always do, with our Big 5 topics on Bigger 10. Let's start at the top with the good news. You know, back in October, pretty much the consensus, around the league
is the funny part.
It is. I mean, the consensus was it was Purdue, Michigan, and everybody else. That Michigan probably had the most talented roster, but a lot of it was very young. Purdue was bringing everybody back, and so it was just a matter of how long would it take the Michigan team to gel, and we expected Purdue to be kind of a consistent force nationally the entire season. I think they were ranked in the top 10 of the AP poll the entire season. Okay, so it was a bit of a long and winding road to get here. It's been a long, strange trip. Neither one of these teams won the Big Ten. Neither one of them won the Big Ten tournament. A lot of people think Michigan shouldn't even been in the tournament, right? But at the end, the last two Big Ten teams standing, Aaron, are the same two Big Ten teams. If we gone back and talked to our fall selves, we would have said, what's the big deal? These are the two teams everybody had pegged at the start of the year, and here we are at the end, the last two standing, marching on to the Sweet 16, Purdue and Michigan.
Yeah, no, I was going to use long and winding road as well for this, and this is, the entire season was a disappointment and really an underachievement for Michigan.
Yep.
I was on the fence whether or not they really deserved to be in, but I thought, because of the strength of schedule argument, and they do have some good quad one wins as well. Probably in a field like this, probably best to leave them in, especially with all that talent. And here we are. Things are kind of shaking out the way that people in the media picking the Big Ten thought they would have, with kind of the top two teams in Michigan and Purdue standing out. I would say kind of the road to getting here, at least in the tournament, a little bit different. Purdue has looked pretty slick their two games. Michigan got down big against Colorado State, came back, was a 14-point deficit, and then they just wouldn't go away against Tennessee. Thank you very much. I got down on them at halftime, money line, with a little profit boost as well. So, props to those two teams. I said last week, it's hard to be worse than what the Big Ten was last year in terms of moving teams on to the Sweet 16. Turns out I was right, but just barely, by the slimmest of margins.
Well, I had Michigan in the Sweet 16, and it really wasn't a homer pick. We discussed this last week. How many 11 seeds? I think actually there's multiple double-digit seeds that are in the Sweet 16 this year, but 35 of the last 37 years, Aaron, a double-digit seed has made the Sweet 16. Why not pick a team that, how many 11 seeds have 3 McDonald's All-Americans, an actual All-American, a former conference player of the year?
None. Yep.
None. I mean, Michigan dramatically underachieved. Purdue didn't win the Big Ten, but, this would have been the baseline. They may have the number one pick in the NBA draft, certainly a top 5 pick. They've got a guy who has gotten All-American mention coming off their bench right now. They're not starving for players. So the reality is that these two teams did not live up to season expectations. Purdue came a lot closer to that, obviously. But in the end, where it counts the most in March, they are the last two standing. Speaking of March, beware the Ides of March, because mid-March, for the second year in a row, Aaron, has not been kind to our beloved conference. Here's the good news. You mentioned it a minute ago. The Big Ten improved on last year's second weekend showing by 100%. Doubled the number. Last year, Michigan was the only team to get out of 9 bids to get to the second weekend. This year, we doubled it. 2 did. But here's what that means, brother. 18 Big Ten teams have been selected to play in the last 2 NCAA tournaments, and only 3 of them have made it to the second weekend. Your thoughts on that?
I've been thinking about this a lot over the last 4 or 5 days, and I think the consensus/lazy answer is officiating. I don't think that helps anything. I don't think that's the answer. I would like to just say that the Big Ten is overall overrated. I don't know how that explains, though, what the metrics show the last couple of years as well, unless it's just totally misleading. I don't know what the cause is. I really don't know what the cause is. I wish I did. I wish I had some silver bullet answer, but there are teams, it just seems they get the yips once they hear the CBS theme song, March Madness theme song, roll it up. They just get the yips, and I don't know what that is. And it's weird that it seems to be conference-wide as well. When you look at Rutgers and their play-in game against Notre Dame, they should have won that game. They really should have won that game. They had a late turnover. I believe it was either in regulation or the first overtime. That if they had just held onto the ball, they likely would have shot a couple of free throws and really iced the game. They should have won that game. Indiana, I'm talking about the play-in games here. Indiana looked terrible. I mean, that Indiana-Wyoming game, Indiana ended up covering, but it was just an ugly game, and then they came out and just completely laid an egg against St. Mary's. Then, we'll be talking about Iowa in a little bit. That's a total different story as well. Illinois and Ohio State, talent enough to get to the Sweet 16, bowing out early again on the first weekend. Do you have any ideas what the answer is here?
So I think there is one theory that explains most of it. Pardon me, but not all, because, pardon me again, Illinois last year had about as good of a 3-guard offense as we've had in our league, maybe since that 3-guard offense Illinois had in 2005 when they went to the national championship game. I mean, Curbelo was terrible this year, but he was great last year. You had Io and you had Frazier. I mean, that is an incredible 3-guard offense, and that's why a lot of people thought they were going to go to the Final Four last year, and then they got tempoed by Loyola Chicago and knocked out of the tournament. Illinois aside, though, the last 2 years, who's been the great point guard in this league?
Yeah. Exactly.
See, I think that could be the issue. Is last year between Hunter and Garza and Trevion Williams, and I mean, last year this was a big man-driven league. Last year, this year it's been more of a wing player-driven league. Johnny Davis, Keegan Murray, but college basketball, particularly in March, has always been a guards game, and so who's been ever since Cassius Winston left, Michigan State's had a revolving door at point guard the last 2 years. I think that's really the issue. It's the biggest issue. Like I said, Illinois had as good of a 3-guard alignment as we've had in our league in recent memory a year ago, and they couldn't make it out of the first weekend either. But they're also a program that hasn't made it past the first weekend, I think, since they made the 2005 national championship. So do you think that could be the issue? It's that the talent in our league going into March or going into the Madness has not been at the most important position in March Madness, and that's at guard, particularly at the point.
Yeah, I can see that, and that's a conversation that we've had before as well. But when you're talking about overall talent as well, it just doesn't. How can Illinois happen last year? Yeah, it's tempo, and then Iowa happens this year, and yeah, they don't have an outstanding point guard, but they should show up on any day and beat Richmond. How do those yips just happen like that? And there are, other examples as well. I mean, who was the last team to out-badger Wisconsin, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well, so I don't want to step on that. I don't know. There's just something.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't answer everything.
Yeah.
I think it's
one of the biggest things.
It's one of the biggest things, but it doesn't answer everything.
Do you agree that the lazy answer though is officiating? I don't think it helps anything, but I just think that's the throwaway kind of. Well, yeah, obviously we have the worst
because the league
officials.
is too the old theory used to be that our league allows too much physicality, and then we get into the tournament and they don't let you do that, and so I really don't think that's the issue. I think that the number one issue that would correct most, but not all of these issues, would be better point guard play. But as you pointed out, there are still some other factors with some of these other teams, one of which we'll talk about right now. The state of Iowa, hey man, bigger 10 give it than bigger 10 take it away. All right. So we were sitting here last week singing the state of Iowa's praises as the basketball capital of the Big Ten, winning the Iowa women winning the regular season and conference tournament championship, the men winning the conference tournament championship. Neither one of them making it past the first weekend. The Iowa women losing at home to Creighton, to a gal that wasn't good enough to play on the team. So she had to transfer and then lit them up in the second half to get her revenge in a heartbreaking loss. I watched the end of that game. The crowd support and the energy there at Carver Hawkeye, that's the most I've seen in an Iowa basketball game, Aaron, in many,
men's
many,
or women's, yeah.
Yeah, men's or women's in many years. And then there was whatever that, we got a one and done, survive an advanced game, we'll get to it kind of effort that Iowa had against Richmond, where they looked beyond disinterested in playing. I thought Keegan Murray looked beyond passive for much of the game. Maybe it's just as simple as that team kind of shot its wad the week prior to win the conference tournament. Who knows? But a week ago, Iowa was the capital of Big Ten basketball. A week later, yikes.
Yep. Moving on. No. One more thing. You think the officiating is bad in the men's game? Watch the women's game. Oh my goodness.
They're all wearing masks, so that maybe they can't see the court very well.
There you go. But that's my last commenting on officiating. Iowa didn't lose the game because of that. No, neither team did. On the men's side, I'm not sure if it was just disinterested. What I saw mostly was we're not leading by as much as we thought we were 5 minutes into the game. Maybe this is not going as well as we thought it was going to go. And then the team just commenced to get the yip. The entire team just got the yips. They just got the yips. It wasn't just Keegan Murray. The entire team was passive. They had open shots, especially in the first half. They just couldn't knock them down, and I think that just compounded, and they were walking away after one game. The good news, though, for me, just personally, I brought up the example of the 2006 Iowa men's basketball team who won the Big Ten tournament, bowed out on a buzzer beater in something called Northwestern State in the first, I think it was the opening day of the tournament as well.
Y'all need to stop playing teams called Northwestern and stuff that matters.
Yeah. In Northwestern State. And that game literally made me sick. This one I could see coming a little bit further away, too. So it softened the blow a little bit, but I don't know how you explain it other than they just got super tight and super tense and super nervous. And then the women's game, I honestly didn't have a chance to watch that other than just a snippet, I think, in the second quarter. But I don't know, snake bit, something like that. It's just Iowa is not going to make the Sweet 16, at least on the men's side. They're just not. They're not.
Well, they haven't done it this century. And, I talked about maybe being kind of blowing your wad in the conference tournament.
I was worried about
Richmond just did that.
Yeah.
I totally forgot. Richmond was not even on the bubble, by the way. They were like the sixth seed in the Atlantic 10.
Proceeded to get blown out by Providence.
Yes. Yeah. So, but they aren't alone. Wisconsin, co-Big Ten champions, as you pointed out earlier, they got beat at their own game. I mean, they got badgered by Iowa State, who went really old school Wisconsin and did the full Dick Bennett and just said, let's all just play in a peach basket and the first one to 50 wins. All right. And now Wisconsin was hurt when its point guard, its freshman who was really coming on here in the last few weeks, he got banged up and had to leave the game. And then after that, their offense it went from inconsistent to what is that? Okay. For the rest of the game. I don't understand Greg Gard not deciding, you know what, we're just going to run the offense through Johnny Davis, put him at the point so that we at least know he's touching the ball every possession, because Iowa State made sure that he didn't touch the ball every possession. The Cyclones played incredible defense. Gabe Kalsher, the transfer from Minnesota, played the game of his life, and he said, hey, I was inspired. I'm from Minnesota. I hate Wisconsin. Well, it worked. And so you have Iowa State with T.J. Otzelberger himself, a Wisconsin native. They go up to Milwaukee in what was, there was a lot of Iowa State fans, but let's face it, that was basically a Wisconsin home game. And they eliminate the Badgers, and Wisconsin eliminated by a team that last year was 2-22 and is now in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, what a great accomplishment for Iowa State. And that game, I watched actually most of that one, and that was somewhat of a consolation prize for me, because I won no matter what. I won in that game no matter what. Either little brother, I get to cheer for little brother, because no matter how many times or how much effort people like you, don't shy away from that, and others in Cyclone Nation and Cyclone World try to make this into a rivalry. Big brother still cheers for little brother. We want to see them. We want to see them compete and succeed.
I like this answer. Even the condescension actually makes it even worse if you're a Cyclone. I like it.
Yeah. So we like to see little brother succeed, but and especially if it's against one of our worst rivals in conference. So I also took Iowa State money line pregame, and that one paid off for me as well. So it is rare though. You see, though, the Badgers get a dose of their own medicine. I think Johnny Davis probably comes back, don't you think? I think he could probably use another year.
No, he'll be a top 10 pick.
Really?
He gone. Absolutely, he gone. He's going to be a top 10 pick. So that brings us to Ohio State. We mentioned a minute ago, Iowa has, and it's just damn near inexplicable that Iowa hasn't made it past the first weekend this century, right? We also talked about Wisconsin getting out-badgered by Iowa State, but it lost its point guard. Here's something even more inexplicable. When you talk about the tradition and the talent base that surrounds this program, how is it possible when we kick off March Madness next year in 2023, Aaron, it'll be a full decade since Ohio State's last berth in the Sweet 16. How is that possible given the demographics of that state, the talent around them, the tradition of that program? Let's face it, the resources they have at their disposal now from an NIL perspective. How is it possible they have not been to the Sweet 16 at Ohio State now in going on a decade, which means, of course, as well, the entire tenure that Chris Holtmann has been head coach?
I don't know. This is similar to the questions we have in football sometimes. Why is Illinois not as good as they could be with, not as fertile but still fertile recruiting grounds? What could be with a team like Rutgers or Maryland? It's similar to that, but I don't think it's as complicated as it is with football, or at least as hard as it is with football. I think we have to remind ourselves every single year, March is just weird. It's just
there
weird.
Is a bit of randomness. That's why it's called the madness.
Yes, yeah. It is weird. You would think, with all of that success they've had and how many times they've actually made the tournament, can't really remember the last time Ohio State basketball had like a bad year. It's odd that they could just get bounced in the first weekend 10 years in a row, but March Madness does that to teams. You don't need to look any further than the team that we just talked about a few minutes ago. It just has that effect. Not an excuse, obviously. You should still expect to do better than the first weekend, more than once every 10 years or so, or 15. But that's what March does.
Well, what we do is Would You Rather? And we're going to do that again here on Bigger 10 when we come back. All right, back here on Bigger 10, let's play our weekly game of Would You Rather. Aaron, this one is for you. Would you rather vote for Bob Knight or Tom Izzo as the greatest basketball coach in Big Ten history. So Knight has the most national championships. Izzo now has eclipsed him, though, in total victories. They're pretty close to one another, I think, in Big Ten championships. So those have got to be your top two coaches ever in the history of this league. Which one would you rather vote number one?
Bob Knight. Yeah, that's pretty easy. I mean, this is, it's not something to sneeze at to be the winningest coach, but at the same time, the only thing that really matters is March. It's like not that I'm still stung by this, because I'm definitely still stung and I cry myself to sleep a little bit at night still. It's like the Big Ten tournament championship, which is still a pretty good accomplishment. It's like that never happened. It's like that never happened for Iowa. About a week and a half ago. Everything comes down to March, and I think national championships, at least in my brain, that's the key rubric. So I'm going with Bobby Knight.
We haven't had a Big Ten team, by the way, win this tournament since Izzo did in 2000. We've had a crap ton of teams, though, get to the Final Four, just not finish it off. A lot of them coached by Izzo.
This one's for you. Would you rather be sad or disappointed?
Let me translate that question. Would you rather work out Aaron's psychosis, Steve, or your own, right? Oh, gosh. I think I'd rather be sad, because that means maybe I can claim some form of victim status. Something bad was done to me.
There you go.
Where if I'm disappointed, it's probably the fault of me or my own team or somebody I care about that I got to take ownership of. And that makes it even worse, because you can't be sad. You just get mad, right? Yeah. So you don't want to be mad, so you get disappointed. Yeah, I think I'd go with sad. All right, for you, would you rather be, therefore, the next college basketball coach at Michigan State or Indiana? I don't think Mike Woodson, given his age, no matter how much success he has there, is going to be the coach there 5-10 years from now. I think we both agree Tom Izzo is not going to be the coach at Michigan State 5-10 years from now. So you still have huge Knight-sized shoes to step into in Bloomington. Izzo, of course, is the greatest coach that university's ever had in any sport. Which of those two jobs would you rather be the next basketball coach at?
My gut reaction is Michigan State. I don't know what the deal is with Indiana, but I guess if your name is not Bob Knight, it's really hard to achieve consistent high echelon success there. Not that it's easy to do at Michigan State, but I think there's probably a little bit more of continuity and a little bit better foundation, it seems like, at Michigan State, thanks to what Tom Izzo has accomplished there. I would rather be coming off of that and trying to build upon that or sustain that, instead of trying to live up to a mythic status of somebody like Bob Knight. So that's what I would rather do.
Okay.
This one's for you. Life is pain.
Oh, man.
Just kidding. Would you rather be snake bitten or unlucky?
Oh, man, you are so where I was at this time last year with Michigan football, and the entire offseason, the entire season, really, until the Wisconsin win. And then I was that way again until the Penn State win. I just could not believe, no matter what, because they've just crushed me so many times. So I'm not laughing at you, man. I'm laughing with you. I know where this is coming from. I feel it. I'm feeling you. Okay.
13-year-old Aaron is back.
Yes. Well, it sounded a lot like 47-year-old Steve last year. All right. So I'm feeling you. And my answer is, of course, yes or no. Actually, the answer is no. I'd rather be neither. When we come back, let's get to our Twitter poll and our feedback of the week next.
3, 2.
This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you who's got a better shot to be in the Final Four: Purdue, who is now the top seed remaining in their bracket, or Michigan, who is probably in the most loaded bracket remaining, with Houston, who was in the Final Four last year, Arizona, a number 1 seed, and Villanova, who's got 2 national championships here in the last 7 years. Not surprisingly, Purdue won this one going away. Is it deserving, though, of an 89-11 complete and total distancing, though, do you think?
No. So there's 2 factors here. One is, One is quantifiable, one is kind of unquantifiable. I'll start with the latter. The unquantifiable one is, would you rather be the hunted or the hunter? So in Purdue's case, they are the hunted. As you mentioned, they're the top-seeded team left in their region. But with Michigan, they are still the hunter right now, but they don't match up nearly as well, I don't think, as Purdue probably does with their teams. And that's the second thing, the matchups. Michigan's going to have to go through Arizona. I said last week, I thought on the entire right side of the bracket, including Kansas in the Midwest, I thought Arizona was the worst matchup for basically any team there. They were a little bit shaky against TCU, as you know. I still think they're a difficult matchup for basically anyone. So I like Purdue, but I think it should have been more 60-65, 60-40, 65-35, something like that.
Agree. And we played Arizona earlier this year, and they basically named the score. The thing that is fascinating from a Purdue perspective, to me, the most illogical stat ongoing right now in Big Ten athletics is that Purdue hasn't been to a Final Four in 42 years. 1980. That's the last time they've been to a Final Four. How does the team with the most Big Ten basketball championships ever go 42 years between Final Fours? I mean, this has been a pretty outstanding program for many of those 42 years. If just like where you are right now, and where I was with Michigan football last year, it's just never happened against Ohio State, right? And that's where you're at. Look at the team we had, the run we just had. We got an NBA lottery pick, and we're playing a Richmond team as a play-in, and a Providence team that, according to Ken Palm, is the third luckiest basketball team of the last 20 years. If we can't get out of the Sweet 16 this year, it's never happening, right? That was probably your kind of thinking. Yep. If you're a Purdue fan, aren't you thinking that right now? Mm-hmm. I mean, 42 years of waiting and pain, and we're the highest remaining seed, and we've got maybe the number one pick in the NBA draft. If we can't do it this year, you might be thinking it's never happening, right? So that there is some added extra pressure there on Purdue. I do think, though, it's somewhat alleviated by the fact they've got the more favorable matchup than Michigan does. That brings us to our feedback of the week. This isn't actually feedback. It's something we shared on our Bigger 10 account that I wanted us to discuss here. Courtesy of Zach Shaw at 24/7 Sports, Big Ten Sweet 16 appearances in the last 9 tournaments. Pardon me, so the last decade. Michigan's been there 7 times. Michigan State 4, Wisconsin 4, Purdue 4, Indiana 2, Ohio State 1, Maryland 1, Iowa, Illinois, Northwestern, Minnesota, Rutgers, Nebraska, Penn State 0. By the way, Nebraska is the last remaining Power Conference team that's never won an NCAA tournament game. Those numbers mean what, if anything, to you, Aaron?
When you go, March, April, right after the tournament, and they already have odds up on the board for next year's tournament champion. With a few exceptions, I think Gonzaga maybe last year and this year as well. Early on preseason, they were like maybe 3 to 5 to 1, something like that. That sounded about right. Once you get out of those upper echelon, 3, 4, 3 through the third through the fifth best teams in college basketball, there are some insane odds for those teams. I mean, you get up into the 10s, 20s, 30s, and 50s pretty quickly, and then it should be even higher than that. My point being with this is a lot of things have to go your way a lot of times to be consistently good. You can be as good of a coach as you want to be, and that's borne out with Michigan. They've got a couple of good head coaches, and you can see that in that stat there. 7 appearances, 6 Sweet 16 appearances in the last 10 years. That's coaching, but that's a lot of stuff going really right at the right times as well.
Yep.
And that's why this season you can be euphoric or you can be, suicidal, so to speak, or wanting to cut yourself, because it's just so random and zany, and that's I guess the fun of it. If you like to have fun, and if your team doesn't get beat by Richmond.
I mean, as a Michigan fan, I can attest to what you're saying. I mean, John Beilein's system and ability to adjust in game made Michigan a very difficult prep on a short amount of time. Okay, and I think that's why, especially against the spread, he had the best winning percentage against the spread of any coach in current college basketball, was because of that. Under Jawan, last year you're talking about a team that was absolutely loaded. There's 4 guys right now in the NBA off of that team, but then you turn around and you lose 51-49. With all that talent, you lose 51-49 in the Elite Eight, and I kind of felt last year like it didn't even matter. We won these last 3 NCAA tournament games. I mean, it was one thing if we lose to UCLA because they hit 15 threes, right?
Yep.
But you can't lose 51-49. You can't do that, right? Then you look at what happened this year. I really think Frankie Collins being forced into action and then everybody shocked to find out that he's ready to play, I think that helped us immensely. There's not a lot of film on him. He's a totally different style of point guard than Devontae Jones, which is an old man game kind of guy. And Frankie Williams is lightning fast and quick. He gives your defense an entirely new look. I don't think Tennessee had much time to prep for him. Colorado State had almost no film on him at all. So it can be those quirks and things that you're right, you randomly take advantage of. And that's why the real key is how many cracks does your head coach give you to take advantage of those quirks, right? If you're only going once every few years, that's why I think you get a better knowledge of where Fran McCaffrey's at as a tournament coach. If Iowa's in it the next 2 years in a row and still can't get past the first weekend, because sooner or later, if you're any kind of coach,
you have to.
The breaks will go your way by virtue of just being there when they happen.
Yep.
But you got to get there for that to happen, right? That's why the Purdue stat just freaking stuns me. How good they have been, how many times they've been in the tournament. How could not one time in 42 years did the ball just not bounce your way? It also tells you how damn good of a coach Tom Izzo is, that he's been to 7 Final Fours? That tells you how many times he's taken advantage of the ball bouncing his way. So yeah, it's skill and luck, and it's luck and skill. Exactly. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode of Bigger 10. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Bigger 10 in between episodes. And remember to like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review, etc. However you watch, wherever and whichever way you watch or listen, like right here on iTunes or on YouTube, or you listen to the podcast on iTunes. Just help us to find more Big Ten fans just like you. Until the next time, here's hoping. We've got 2 Big Ten teams in the Final Four to talk about next week. Until then, we'll see you next time on Bigger 10.